Join us for another episode where real men have real conversations about leadership, relationship, morality, and dominion. Welcome to Mancode.
Hey, viewing audience. My name is Jonathan Russell, and I'd like to welcome you back to the Mancode conversation.
Yeah, for sure. And I also think the term is used too loosely because I feel like it depends on the scenario, right? Like if you don't if a black person doesn't if a black person loves listening to, let's say, country music, for example, right? I mean, we know obviously the history of country music, but the way country music is now is mostly white guys. You see, it's like, oh, you're Uncle Tom, you don't listen to rap music. I feel like that's a inaccurate use of the definition. I think it's an unfair use of the definition. Now, you got some people running around here who are denying the realities of the state of black people in America. That's where that term, I feel like Donnell said, has like his validity, right? And so if you pander, and I was just kind of looking at the definition of it, it's like pandering for white approval, and at the expense of that is your blackness, right? You deny your blackness to get the approval of white people. I mean, I've seen it happen at work. It's like, come on, man, like what? Like you don't have to do that to get approval. You could very much still be yourself and move up the chain, move up the ladder, right? But I think, like I said, it's just misusing the definition, and I think the concept of what an Uncle Tom is definitely still exists. It definitely still exists.
And I will say this too: we black people in particular, we're real quick to call somebody that too. You got. I won't call any names out here, but there's some sportcasters on ESPN and so forth, and they've been called some of the Caucasian sports commentators have been called more black than some of these high-profile black ones. Even they talked about, you probably know who I'm talking about, but the point is, you know, like they're more black because maybe they're not siding with what we as African community feel they should side with on an issue. You know, I'm sure when President Barack Obama was president, he got caught up in that same thing too, because if he didn't take issue with a lot of people say that he didn't do enough, you know what I'm saying, for the African Americans. Now, I'm not into all politics and all deep on that, but you know, that's something that I would not debate or judge. But my point is, we're just quick, in a sense, if things aren't going the way that we think they should for whatever reason, then we'll lock in and say, hey, he's a sellout or he's this or he's that, whether it's just or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know we said we didn't. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Jonathan.
Look, I can say this because I've been called a sellout. I've been called an Uncle Tom because of my viewpoint, because of the way that I voted, and I've been ashamed about it. Because one thing I look at is, as human beings, you have to look at how situations align to you. And there are causes I've not jumped behind because I always want to know the backdrop. I'm not just going to jump into something because I see 50 brothers marching down the street and, oh, there's a bunch of us, let me join in. No, I need to make sure that whatever value they're assigned to, that lines up with me. So I think it really comes down, again, to the point of individuality. We have too much of a herd mentality about how we view it. Yeah, we know we have challenges as a people. We know there's a struggle. But at the end of the day, you still have to think what best aligns with me and what category do I fit? I think that'll take a lot of this terminology and put it in its place. But make your point down here, because I want to hear what you got to say, Steve.
I don't even have a point no more, man.
Yeah, no, I just want to say I agree 100% with you, Jonathan, and it kind of reminds me of like this like Malcolm X versus Martin Luther King comparison, or it is, you know, W.B. Du Bois versus George Washington Carver comparison. It's just like everybody has their different tactics, but at the end of the day, everybody wants to get the same goal accomplished. And I think that's the point that's missed a lot of time when the term Uncle Tom is thrown around. Like, because you don't agree with someone's tactics, you lose sight of what the end goal is. Whereas, like, if you look at Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, they wanted the same thing, right? But it was just their way of going about to do it was completely different. And we get so caught up in the methods a lot of times, and we just stop there. We don't look at the end goal a lot of times. And I think that's where a lot of people get confused. But like I said before, I still stand by what I said. There are definitely still some people who deserve to be put in that category of Uncle Tom.
But you know, I think that's more of a thing of a power grab, because I think that's in the heart of people, period, human beings. You know, you want to consume power. You want some control. So naturally, some people are going to do whatever they have to do to get that. That's just natural. I mean, you could look at those who we even thought as some leaders that were down, and when you really peel things back, you saw at the end of the day, they were in it for the money. They were in it for the influence. They were in it for the game. So again, think for yourself. That's all I'm gonna say. Think for yourself.
Yeah. This may be my just opinion, but you know, honestly, I believe that if you are in politics, you are in it for the money. Just real talk. I think when you talk about your senators and your congressmen, you know, people who actually sit in seat of power in order to create policy, in order to pass bills, that's a seat of power. Those seats are stronger than the seat of the president of the United States, because that's where the magic actually happens. And so, you know, we look at it, these men are in these seats until they die. I mean, these men die in these seats. They don't give them up. You know what I'm saying? And so with all this PAC money and all these things that basically come to sway votes one way or the other, that's where the power lies. So the reason I'm bringing that up is because when we start talking about your vote, we start talking about utilizing your voice, you shouldn't just give away your vote just because your parents have voted a particular, party, all your life, or you identify that this particular party is the party for the people, because in actuality, this is just one black man's opinion, both parties is two sides of the same coin as far as I'm concerned. Because at the end of the day, the powers that be, those that actually, the 1%ers are the one that's dictating the flow of where things are going and where policies and things are actually moving. Where you do have a voice and where things do shift is basically who you are voted in as your congressman, voted in as your senators. Utilize your voice, utilize your power to vote, and be strategic in what it is that you do that best benefits the African-American agenda. If you don't know what that is, sit down at the table with those who actually are in those spaces trying to make those changes, and then align yourself with those things that you agree with. Just don't align yourself just because they're black, because just because they're black doesn't necessarily mean that they're down for African-American agenda. It doesn't mean that. Just, so let's just stop identifying based on our color and start identifying based on what we feel is best. I mean, because, and I know, I'm just gonna say this. I was talking to a young pastor in the Detroit area, and I was talking to him about engaging in his community and strategies about engaging in the area, about his church becoming a beacon in the community. And so I was just on Google Maps, and I started going around, looking down the streets and stuff around his church, and it's just desolation. There's like just abandoned homes, empty lots, closed down stores for just blocks to the north, south, east, and west. There's 3 churches on that corner that sits right on this particular corner, but everything to the right, left, behind it, basically, you see small little 3 houses, well manicured homes, but everything else is desolated. And that just caused me to start thinking about, we will let neighborhoods sit like that for decades. And then somebody will come in and say, hey, we're going to develop this area. And then immediately as African Americans, we start talking about, oh, there it is again. There's, gentrification, coming in. And I was like, but it's sat there for decades. It's not the fact that you don't have money. It's not the fact that there's not African American athletes and doctors and lawyers and attorneys who have the capital to which they could actually go in and actually revitalize certain areas. We're not asking for them to pay, but they could actually do something to move an area forward, you know what I'm saying, and start a generator in order to get people back into home ownership and back into revitalizing their neighborhoods and their communities, or just simply as African Americans, if I have a house that's next to me that's burnt down or whatever, we take our Saturdays and go and clean up the house and board up the house and take our own revenue. I mean, because the reality is that that property, even though it's not yours, because we have this, it's not mine. So, you know, I'm not going to invest, but it's your community. It's what your kids see when they walk out of their house. It's the neighborhood your kids play in when they go outside to play, you know. And so I think as African Americans, we talk about being, you know, Blackness. I think we're losing a lot of what the 60s and the 50s actually did have, and that was they had a sense of unity. They had a sense of camaraderie. They had a focus, and I think that's what made them dangerous. And the reason why they had to cut the heads of leadership off, because it was just like in the Bible. You know, even God himself said, it was like, you know, if he didn't confuse the tongues, there was nothing that they could not have accomplished. He said there was nothing that they could not accomplish. They would not have. So he had to confuse the language because they had already started doing these great things. So it's like, you know, when you have a leader, you have somebody basically on the forefront that could actually give guidance and direction in order to focus that energy, those resources, you know, towards a common goal. There's nothing that we can't do. So at the end of this conversation about Blackness, I think that, you know, if we were to just rally what the essence of being Black is, or African American, or whatever title you subscribe to that you connect to this particular race of people, you know, at the end of the day, we just need to rally ourselves together. Black Lives Matter, great rallies. You know, it started a movement that went across the world. People were, you know, shouting in the streets for equality. But then I said that was the best and the worst of times, because I knew that we were going to rally and then it was going to die, and then nothing was leveraged as a result of it. There was no policies that were changed as a result of it. There were no bills that were passed as a result of it. There was the only thing that we had that was a resounding thing was defunding the police. That was it. Defunding the police was the resounding cry, and that didn't even happen. And so it was just kind of like one of those things of, it was all emotional. And as African Americans, we're steeped in the emotion. It felt good, you know, we were doing something. But I think the difference between Martin and Malcolm is that Martin was actually in DC creating policy change, and Malcolm was in the community galvanizing and moving the people in the community. That's the stark difference I see between the two. And the one that actually created the most change was what Malcolm did. I mean, was what Martin did, because he actually caused a shift in how the United States of America moved towards how African Americans were moving in the United States.
Wow. Hey, Danielle will be on speaking tour. We'll be announcing that soon. I will be in charge of all his booking dates. So yeah, we're gonna get this cooking. But no, I'm just gonna piggyback on what you said, and I love that because you really brought up something that I have thought of a lot. And that's not always going with, I call it the angel of light theory. You know, the Bible says that the devil comes as an angel of light. So if I want to deceive you, I'm gonna come looking like you. So if my whole premise is based on just identifying with who looks like me or who might sound like me, but I'm not really looking at what they stand behind or what they stand for, I'm always gonna get thrown off. And I'm not trying to be negative. I've looked at all my life, Black politicians getting elected to office. And we elect them into office with the idea of looking for change. We want our voice in Washington. We want our voice in our state capital, you know, sitting on our city council, so that, you know, our communities can be highlighted. Things can be changed. We can reduce crime. We can bring awareness to things. But I just want to ask, how much do we really see that happening? So that's just a blanket statement for the audience. That's not something we got to answer, but I just want us to think about that. So when we are thinking in that sense, because our vote counts, think about what they stand for and not just that they look like me, so they must be cool. Again, but I'm gonna shift this because we kept talking on this all throughout our conversation. But really, and we know it has, but how can we really fight back against music, movies, and TV always making a bad depiction of what Black is? How can we really fight? I want a solution this one. I mean, I have something, but I want to hear if y'all have any thoughts on this. Because I think that's been our main culprit.
Yeah,
You know, we started with the whole step and fetch it, the Uncle Tom character. And when you just keep going down the line, it's always a similar narrative. So
yeah, I think it starts with us like being the key players in those spaces and us controlling that narrative, right? So it's a rapper out named Bobby Shmurda. I don't know if y'all know him or not, the Shmurda dance. And I was listening to a podcast called Louder Than a Riot, and they were talking about his audition that he had for, I forgot what record label it was, but it was one of the top execs was a Black guy. I want to say it was like LA Reid or somebody. I can't remember exactly who it was, but his audition was for him to go perform in front of the board for this record label. The board was the one Black guy and the rest were white people, right? And so he gets up on the table and it's just like Bobby, just like it was scary to watch as a Black person, right? And everybody was just like, oh wow, yes, this is good. And it's like, as Black people, we got to protect ourselves from that kind of stuff, right? It's like, come on, man, this can't be what we allow them to put out. Like, this can't be the only thing about us that's allowed to be put out. Whereas like you got independent artists who have conscious rap, who makes great R&B music. Those aren't the people that are mainstream. Why? Because we don't have like the big record labels that control a lot of that stuff. Now, I will say, in the world of streaming, I feel like that world is starting to change so much, and more of our music is starting to change, right? And you can equate that in the education system. The only thing we learned about Black people in school that I can recall was Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, slavery, and maybe Madam C.J. Walker, right? But a lot of the things that I learned, I had to learn in the home from my parents. I had to learn from teachers who cared about teaching us more about our history than just like this dark period. And so like, as we start to control a lot more of those spaces, I think that's where the narrative changed. And this is my last point. Sorry, I'm going so long, but I think also stop only pinpointing this is why Black people are this way because of music, right? Let's just say a white kid rapes a bunch of women, right? We never say, oh, that's Hugh Hefner, the Playboy Mansion promoted that kind of stuff, right? We never hear that. Or like a white kid could go up and shoot up a school and it's a rock song out that's talking about, I want to kill everybody. We never say, oh, that's Kiss saying that rock song. That's why that white kid is doing that. And so it's like everything negative that Black people do, it's like they always try to find like this thing, this music, this movie, this whatever, and they don't do it to any other culture. Just like this term of Black on Black crime. You never hear white on white crime. You never hear Asian on Asian crime. You never hear Mexican on Mexican crime. I think it's a way to, I guess, villainize everything we do, and we got to change that narrative ourselves, I feel like, unfortunately.
That's well said. Well, has it molded a bad image depiction? Definitely yes. Are we guilty of that ourselves? Yes. Of course, we know the power of media and all that, and they pretty much control things unless you get out there and get ahead and control the narrative yourself. But yeah, I would just hope that it's pretty much the leadership of all these big companies and so forth. You guys might be more versed on this to me, but we as a community, African Americans, we put that stuff a lot out ourselves because it sells, and they want to buy it. So we got to take accountability. What they're going to try to do is get that money. At the end of the day, it's all about money. It's all about record sales. So it comes back to that individual person and that moral compass that they have. Are you going to do this? I was watching something the other day, and you guys might be up on this too. There was a preacher. It was on YouTube. It was called This Preacher versus Beyonce. And apparently she has an album out called Church Girl or something. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but you might want to check it out.
That's a song on her new album.
Yeah, sure, yeah, and he came against that real strong. And I really, and just from a spiritual standpoint, religious standpoint, he was saying that more preachers need to be out, talking about things like that. But the point is that those are the types of songs that you're getting out there. And yeah, we know the power of the media too. But even though it's negative, we do have to admit that the media does do some good things. They do try to change some things, but it's just the influence is so great. And we see those pictures, like I say, we talk about, this is not topic, but we talk about the crime, the African Americans, so forth. We know what's happening with the communities and how we're sometimes our worst enemies. You know what I'm saying? We talk about the police this and police that. But if we can take care of our own selves to a better degree, we can kind of change a lot of things that's happening. But I'm not gonna get on that. But long story short, yeah, we know the power of the media. It has definitely depicted, in many cases, a bad image of the black people for sure. Black people for sure.
I want to be quick. So
let's see. Take your time.
Right. So I agree with basically what Austin and Pastor Malcolm basically was saying. The reality of it is that I think that we have come a long way with the actresses and actors and the roles they're actually choosing. I see that actors are choosing, they're more selective in how they want to present themselves, how they want to use their name. You take a Denzel Washington, even some younger actors and actresses that are out there, they're being more careful on how they're lending their celebrity and what messages they're trying to bring forward. I think the more we do that, the better we are. I do hope that we move away from that we had an era of like slave movies, where we were putting out all these different even mini episodes. It was like all this slavery, and I think that kind of feeds back into us not forgetting where we have been, but it doesn't help us move forward. It always keeps you in looking in your rearview mirror instead of looking out your front mirror. So I think more content that we have as moving forward. I think putting African Americans in more leading roles in movies, that deal with, it doesn't make a difference what it is. I think that people just need to start seeing, you start to see more biracial relationships in movies. You start seeing them on commercials. You start seeing, I think media is a depiction of what our societal acceptance is now. Because you see more LGBT, relationships in our sitcoms, in our movies. You see, what I'm saying? So there's an evolution that's actually happening, but once again, your media is just that window. Lance Wall now basically does a teaching on the 7 mind molders, and entertainment and media is one of those mountains. And for us not to be looking at that as something that molds and crafts, we know that music and we know that movies are influencers. I'm a 70s baby, but the 90s is basically our era. If you if you looking at eras, and during that time, there were always gangs, but when the movie Colors hit, there was a shift from 6 Mile, 7 Mile, 8 Mile from Detroit, Finkel to Bloods and Crips. There was an automatic shift. Everybody started taking sides on whether I'm a Blood or I'm a Crip, but that basically came out of LA. You see what I'm saying? There was an immediate connection to who we wanted to be affiliated with by media. When I went in Fast and Furious, when it first came out, all of a sudden underground street racing became a primary thing. You started seeing everybody souping up cars, and then you started seeing underground racing come to the forefront. People, buying NOS and all the rest of this stuff. So what I'm saying is that for us not to say that media doesn't have an impact on how we move, how we interact with individuals, we will be lying to ourselves. And so we just need to be responsible for the content that we are creating as African Americans, and make sure we're creating content that actually moves our narrative forward towards change, towards empowerment.
And the last thing I want to say before Jonathan jumps in real quick, because I know we gotta get off here. If you think back to the Oscars, Will Smith, they couldn't wait for that. Oh, we give them a chance, look what they're gonna do. They just couldn't wait to buy into that. You know what I'm saying? That type of thing. Hey, they got this great big platform, and look what happens. Just one incident, but they'll take that and they'll say, okay, I'm not gonna speak for everybody, but a lot of times they'll use that to say, hey, you see what we do? Give them something, and this is how the outcome is.
What I will say though is that there was a rally cry from all sides of the bench in relationship to that. So what I do appreciate is that all of the actors and comedians and everyone basically rising up and sharing their voice on their disapproval of what actually happened, and challenging him, to make a change, to apologize and stuff like that. So we took a hold of that. I can honestly say that in this instance, I feel like African Americans took a hold of the situation and made sure they directed the narrative towards something to change.
Great, that's good.
I like that. Now I'm gonna hit that from a whole different point. Well, maybe not, but you look at entertainment. Entertainment is created. It's created content, okay? Music, movies, and television. These are all things that people came together, brainstormed around, and created. So these aren't things that are even fact. You may take some factual things and blend them into your creation, but you have to look at, I am creating a narrative here. So if I'm creating a narrative, I'm creating this narrative from the point of influence. So my thing is this: if you don't like the narrative that's being created, don't support it. Just because it's a Black movie, find out what the movie was about. Find out, do some information, do some homework. If I had been smarter as a young man, I don't think I would have made some of the decisions that I made, because like you guys just hit it. A lot of your direction is steered by what you see. You're influenced by some things. So our music definitely been an influence. I look at the Blaxploitation movies of the 70s. And the thing is, we supported that because guess what? In a large way, that was all we had. But was that proper support? I can't really say it was. I think it did more negative than it did good. We could sit back on that, look at that as a good time and laugh about it, but you have to look at the imagery that created, and maybe lives that were turned the wrong way as a result of thinking, well, that's my alternative. You look at hip hop. What hip hop became in the 90s steered a lot of people way off course. You get into the gangster rap, you get that divide. Movies like Colors, different movies like Boys in the Hood. Again, creative content, creative mindset, but you have to look at, is this really something that I support, that I'm down? Again, look at it from that standpoint, because at the end of it all, everything is designed to create an image. And you have to determine for yourself what my image is going to be. Am I going to let this be created for me, or am I going to take the role to build that out? So that's it. But I'll tell you, I love this one. We got to do an off the topic conversation like this again, because I think we really dug into some stuff. And I hope you viewers were really vibing with this as well too. Look, we want to hear your comments on this, because I don't care what color of skin you are, it's something that could be said, it's something that could be shared. So definitely give us your comments on this. And as you're watching the video, like it, because again, it's nothing not to like. Very honest conversation, open eyes to a lot of different things, and share this out, because this conversation needs to go on everywhere. All of us needs to have our thoughts revolved around it, because it's something that's going to really help us in the end. And for those who are not, subscribe to the Mancode podcast so you know when we're coming back. But gentlemen, I'd like to thank y'all for joining me today. This has been a great conversation, us men just chopping it up. For viewing audience, until the next time we are back at you, definitely keep the Mancode. See you soon.